Hello, everyone. We are live in the Unready room. How's it going tonight, Brandi?
Oh, it's going fine. I'll warn everybody right now, I'm super tired. So if weird things come out of my mouth, that is why. But other than that, I'm pretty great. How are you, Dan?
I'm good. It's a blessing and a curse that we do this at the end of the week because it's such a nice way to kick off the weekend, but at the same time,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, after the week, So
Yeah, but still I look forward to it because I'm like, yeah, now I get to talk about Trek. Yeah.
definitely. And Chris Littlefield kicking us off here. Your hair is gorgeous tonight.
Thank you.
Really cool.
I,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. This is what it decided to do today. I gave it a little bit of help, but it's just like my hair decides what it's going to look like, and I just try and make it okay.
Yeah. Oh, it
But
looks great.
thank you guys.
So tonight we are talking about a classic Star Trek episode from season 2 of TOS, the Doomsday Machine. For those of you keeping track at home, season 2, episode 6, I believe. I remember
Yes,
looking on Netflix. I think that's what it said.
you're correct.
All right. So yeah, a classic episode written by Norman Spinrad, the science fiction writer extraordinaire, big name in the science fiction world. So this was kind of in the history of Gene Roddenberry trying to get renowned science fiction writers to write for Star Trek. This is definitely one of those cases. So,
Well, and it was a story that he'd already written that had been rejected by several publishers, and so he's just like, "Ooh, I can do it for Star Trek." So he
yeah,
was super excited.
and it fits so well with Star Trek. Like, I feel like so much of the ideas of some of the Star Trek language and stuff, of course, had been well established by this point, but this one really kind of cements some of that stuff, like just the technical aspects of how starship combat works and all this kind of stuff. I feel like a lot of that was woven into the tapestry of this episode.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
And this is also what I call a dad lap episode because this episode terrified me so much as a child that I had to sit on dad's lap to feel safe. And so, I have several dad's lap episodes throughout the original series. By the time
Mhm.
Next Generation started, I was 14. I was fine by then, okay? But this, like cuz we were always watching Trek, and so I probably saw this when I was like 2 or 3 years old for the first time.
Mhm.
Not that I
Yeah.
remember, but I remember all the subsequent times.
For sure. TJ Zamboni Schwartz brings up a good point. Doomsday Machine aged more gracefully than most of TOS. I don't know about maybe most of TOS, but it's definitely one of the episodes that I think has aged very well and is very, very watchable at this point. Like it's a great episode of television.
It is, and it's relevant no matter what time you're in. Like all of Trek, really. But it was James Doohan's favorite episode.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he
Very
mentioned
cool.
that more than once in more than one interview. It was his
Mhm.
favorite episode, even though Scotty didn't have like any super exciting things to do except for being in that Jeffries tube when he's trying to fix a transporter. Just, yeah,
Yeah.
but
I
yeah.
actually have to say I do like Scotty in this episode
Oh, I do
because
too. I always like
the
Scotty.
when he's on the constellation, the interplay between him and Kirk with the like for example, one of my favorite moments is they're trying to distract the planet killer because it's about to pull the Enterprise in, and Kirk has an open channel with Scotty, and he kind of says, "Oh, if only we had just some phaser power or something." Scotty's like, "Phasers? You got them! I got one bank recharged." And Kirk's just like, "Scotty, you've earned your pay for the week." Like that moment is just such a great moment.
Yeah, it was fun, and Dave looks at me, he's like, "They don't get paid?"
at, at this time, they did. Interestingly, there's
Mm,
several references to them getting paid in the original series. I'm going to geek out here right now, but there's one episode where Kirk says to Spock, "How much has Starfleet invested in your and our training?" And Spock starts giving a number. He's like, 1,200,000. Not now, Spock. So they hadn't established the no money thing yet. Interesting.
Fair point. That just came with Next Generation then.
Yeah, actually, I think it was, Star Trek 4 was the first ever mention of...
I suppose they don't have money in the 23rd century.
Well,
we don't.
Yeah. Paid in scotch. I like that, Suzanne. There you go. Scotty's earned his pay. That can be our headcanon. Scotty gets paid in scotch. So
that works for me. Except I thought he actually was more about Russian liquor. Though that was the Kelvin universe. Never mind.
Yeah, and that was Chekhov was more into scotch then. But yeah, anyway.
Sorry. Tired.
It's all good. I also like this point that it might be one of the most best paced episodes of TOS. I like that. The pacing on this is really good as well.
And one of the best scored episodes of TOS.
I have that in my notes to talk about. Let's start there then. The score of this episode. I love it. I hadn't really sat down and noticed this as kind of an aside, but like every single time someone beams in this episode, someone transports, they have that that music behind it. Like even the kind of innocuous beamings here and there, not the really dramatic ones. I was like, yeah, it's interesting.
Well, and the dramatic music certainly builds tension, which also affected me greatly as a child. It just makes you feel dread and that death is inevitable. And just it's a brilliant score, and it's one of, I think it's not common in the original series that they just score an entire episode separately and don't reuse music from other episodes. And it was brilliant. It was just brilliant.
Yeah, it's funny because there's a few episodes here and there that have really iconic themes, and then of course they get reused later in other episodes that kind of waters them down. This is definitely one of them. Like this was such an iconic theme for this episode, and then we get some of the reuse of those bits and pieces of it in later episodes as well. But yeah, this is the originator of them. Making it right up there, I think, with like the Corbomite maneuver and Amok Time for musical scores. Absolutely. That building of tension, like you mentioned, used, I think, the best at the end. And we're jumping all over this episode. We're not doing it in chronological order, but at the end, when Kirk is taking the Constellation into the maw of the planet killer, and the transporter, of course, goes out, which is a cliche now, but at the time...
at the time, this was a new thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, dramatic moment, I need to be off this ship in 30 seconds. So the transporter has gone down.
I love, just as an aside again, the constant like switching back to a shot of the transporter pad with yet another pad going poof, a little puff of smoke.
And Spock just driving Mr. Scott nuts. I'm surprised that Scotty didn't just say, I know, shut up. Thanks, Spock. I know. And the TV version of 30 seconds. It was way more than 30 seconds.
Yeah, because you've got Sulu with that 15, 14. And he gets to like 4 or something like that. And then they show like that shot of it going, and like that's a good 15 seconds right there when he's down to like 5 or 4.
Between Spock saying there were 20 seconds left and Sulu starting with 16, 15, that right there was actually 20 seconds. I counted it.
That's awesome.
Just like, okay, he's dead now. He's dead now, guys. Oh wait, this is TV time. I forgot.
I love it. Yeah, there's so much to talk about with this episode, and I've kind of already jumped around my notes quite a few times.
I know, I do that to people. Sorry.
No, it's all good. So let's talk about Decker. This character, Commodore Matt Decker, who, interestingly, now we have all these many added years of canon to add. We know from Star Trek Discovery that he was one of the top 5 decorated captains in Starfleet 10 years before this episode.
Yes.
So interesting. I feel like this is a character with a lot of history, which is kind of cool.
And I think that they make that clear because
Mhm.
Kirk has a really sort of more of a friendship sort of feel towards him. I mean, calling
Yeah.
him by his first name instead of by, Commodore or anything signifying rank. It was obviously a more personal relationship, or a relationship that had gone for a while and they were comfortable enough with each other that they would refer to each other by first name.
Mhm.
But yeah, I just found that interesting that he doesn't say Commodore the moment he sees him. He says Matt. So yeah, very
Yeah.
familiar there.
And then Spock has that line, and spoiler alert, I'm sure you've seen the episode, everyone, but when Spock says, I what does he say? I'm sorry for the death of your friend, Jim, or something like that. And so it's like, oh yeah, there's a connection there that I almost feel like maybe was more explicit in maybe in an early draft of the script, or something that was maybe cut because of those references in particular.
Could be.
Yeah.
I hadn't really thought about it, but yeah. Yeah, I see that.
Hmm.
So, well, Spock, unfortunately, at this point in the series, Spock is the only representation of Vulcans we really have to go by, that we have any extended knowledge of. And so we just think that what he says is actually true. And then with the context of all the other series, it's just kind of like,
Hmm. For instance, the name you've chosen for today, where he tells the Commodore, Vulcans never bluff. And I love that moment,
yes.
where the Commodore looks at him and they kind of hold their
Hmm.
eyes for a few beats. Like it's a bit of an extended beat, and it goes back and forth. He's like, no, I don't suppose they do they? I love that moment. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is great. That whole the whole play between Spock and Decker is great, and I love it because all the time I'm like, Spock could just nerve pinch him like that, and he'd be out like a light. But Spock isn't that way. He does obey rules and regulations,
He
and he's,
didn't
doing that would be an act of mutiny. So
he
he's
didn't
not
take
gonna.
that lesson from his sister, huh?
No, he did not. He did not. So, if anything, he learned from her mistake. So,
Mhm.
yeah, but he just you can almost just see it in his eyes because Leonard Nimoy is just so good that you
Mhm.
can just kind of you can see, even though his expression doesn't change, you can just see inside he's just going.
There were a lot of micro expressions from Spock in this episode, much more than I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And like throughout the whole episode, it feels like Spock is going like, "Are you kidding me with these humans?
Yes.
Are
Yes.
you kidding
The
me?"
whole pretty much the whole time
Yeah.
from the time Decker gets on board until until Jim is back, he's just like, "Oh, okay,
Like
okay,
even the
okay."
moment where he's talking to Kirk, and Kirk says, the output of a 90 whatever point whatever kiloton explosion, would that be enough to destroy the planet killer? And Spock is like, no, Captain, it is a solid neutronium hull, nothing can get through. Like his voice there
Well,
was like, we've been through
97
this.
8.35 I think was the number, 97.835, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
I had
was
that written in my other notes, which are upstairs because we're the Unready room.
no, I do love that part because it's really like, okay, I'm gonna have to pretend like he doesn't know anything about science or
Yeah.
anything that or has heard anything that I've already said, and I'm going to tell you again, like you're a 5-year-old, that this is not going to work. I think he was still in like dealing with crazy Decker mode, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, like he had that tension in his voice, which, tension in the voice of Spock is an interesting concept, but
Yeah.
it's for him, it's there. Actually, and again, jumping all over the place, but another part where I noticed it was when Decker takes the shuttlecraft and Spock hails them. And if you didn't know anything about Star Trek and had never met these characters before, the way Spock delivers the line, like it's actually imploring on the part of Spock, but for like any other character, it sounds. I wrote this down. He was like, I didn't write the line down, unfortunately. He says, Commodore Decker, I must insist that you return to the Enterprise immediately. And for Spock, it's imploring, but for like a regular human character, if you've never seen Star Trek, it totally sounded like Gene Wilder in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. No, please stop, come back.
Yes. Exactly.
That really struck me. I was like, oh.
It was done like he was doing it out of a sense of duty and concern for a superior officer, but at the same time he's just like, I know I'm making an appeal to a crazy person at this point, and there's nothing that I can say that is going to change his mind, but I have to make the effort anyway.
Yeah.
So here is my insincere plea. No, I didn't find it insincere at all.
No, definitely not. I feel like it was very sincere on the part of Spock, but the tone of voice, if it were a human character, it's totally just what went through my head at the time. I'm liking some of the conversation that's happening in the chat about Decker here. So we'd love to see Decker in Strange New Worlds and to see more Constitution class ships parading on the screen. So yeah, there's some potential there. There's a lot of history to mine for this upcoming Strange New Worlds series. And Decker would be an interesting part of that, especially if, like, at this time, he's already well regarded as one of the top decorated Starfleet officers. And this is 10 years before this, so he's definitely active.
Yeah. And he was in command of the Constellation. I'm so sorry, you guys. The Constellation. Good. I'm having trouble with words tonight. So he had active command at the time that this incident took place. So he'd been in the game for a while and was still just chugging right along and doing his thing until he was driven mad by a robot planet killer.
Okay, I was going to try and do this before we started. I can't find it, but I've got to ask, first of all, did you watch the upgraded HD with the new visual effects version, or the original with the AMT model of the Constellation version?
I have seen the original so many times that I don't need to revisit that. And I could have hunted for it, but I'm just like, nah, let's just watch the upgraded version. Although I do feel that the Planet Killer is not as scary with the special effects that are all new and shiny and upgraded.
Yeah, there's something missing a little bit with regards to it. Maybe just because I'm so used to that older version, but I do have to say, generally overall, this one, like, you can tell they put a lot of work into it on the remastered edition. And I wanted to find a picture of it because one of the things that I remember at the time when they were remastering it and putting it out, an episode a week kind of thing, they were on tight schedules to get those visual effects done. And apparently they were about to send the finished version of this episode out. And as like a practical joke to one of the like team leads, they rendered a special shot of that gorgeous shot of the Constellation where you see the little rock come and hit it and split apart.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
They rendered that with the name USS Consolation on it. And like, it was like the day before they were supposed to send out the finished episode. Oh, you got to look at this. Oh my God, I just noticed this. And like, there's a video of it somewhere. I distinctly remember seeing this, and he's like, oh my God. Oh my God. And he's like freaking out. And like, they had to be like, no, we're just kidding. It's fine.
Oh, kind of like the panic that must have happened when they realized in that short trek
Oh,
they put 1701A on the original Enterprise. Yeah, that Well, of course, but it was one of those situations where they couldn't fix it in
Yeah, it was just
time
too
and
late.
had to go out and just cause people to have a meltdown over canon. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I'm just like, well, I talk about it because I'm just like, yeah, I get that it was a mistake and it was a mistake they couldn't fix. And if you think that they didn't feel horrible about it,
Oh, of
then you don't
course.
have a heart.
Yeah,
So maybe we don't need to pick that to death and make
absolutely.
those people feel even worse.
Absolutely. For sure, for sure. So speaking of the constellation, I was looking at, the timeline of the episodes and stuff, and this is the first time we see a starship besides the Enterprise. And when I say starship, I mean like Constitution class starship. What it
Yeah.
says on the bridge, starship class,
Mhm.
on the Enterprise. So like this is a pretty big deal. Like one of and as we find out in the episode Tomorrow's Yesterday, one of the 12 Constitution class starships in the fleet. So it's kind of a big deal here.
It is a big deal, and as a kid, I had no idea about that because the episodes were shown all out of order, and
Mhm.
so there was no context for me to know that this was the first time we've seen this type of ship, and as an adult, I'm just like,
Mhm.
because I'm a nerd for ships. I have a collection.
Oh, I could point my
Uh,
camera this way and
yeah, most of them are not in this room, but there are a lot in
Mhm.
the house.
Yeah. Um yeah, so seeing this ship and especially seeing it destroyed and like the entire crew lost, 400 plus men and women, that I feel like some people make fun of, not make fun of, but kind of question the performance of William Wyndham at the beginning when they find him, and just saying that he's a little too over the top. I completely buy it, given that, he beamed down his entire crew to this planet, and then that planet was pulverized and he could not rescue them at all. Like, I buy that, his pain and anguish at that and what it
Yeah.
did to him.
I did too, and an interesting thing is he did say, in an interview many years later that he had no idea what any of this meant at the time. He didn't even get the Moby Dick references, and he played it like he was in a cartoon.
Hmm.
So I can understand how some people may see only that, but I think honestly his performance accidentally works if that, if the case was he was doing it in a very cartoonish fashion,
Mhm.
because people who have gone cuckoo are not reasonable, and
Yeah.
they have mood swings like you would not believe. And one moment they might seem completely in control of their faculties, and the next minute, they're just screaming their heads off. And you never know when any of those things are going to happen. So it actually works for me in
Yeah.
this regard.
Um, Speaking of cartoonish, I do have to point at the fight between
Oh, Lord.
him and the security guard,
With
because
volleyball hands.
oh man,
So many volleyball hands.
I even remember that fight as being kind of silly, and I was kind of bracing myself for it. And nothing can prepare you for the
Mm-mm.
amazingness that is that fight. And now that you say that he played it cartoonishly, like, oh yeah, like, um, there's that moment, and then when he's about to die in the shuttlecraft, where he's like, I'm not even going to do it. What he does with his hands, but just the
Yeah.
crazy, which I think works in that case, but
Mm-hmm.
in the fight case, it's like both him and the security guard are just no,
So
that scene
bad.
did not work.
Yeah, and we're just sitting there, and Dave says, "Yeah, martial arts hadn't really become a big thing at this point in just history of movies and television, so they didn't know how to do fight scenes yet."
Yeah,
That's obvious.
yeah, and I mean, we get the phaser knocked away right away, but just the fact that the security officer's immediately like throwing up hands in this kind of weird like
Mhm.
boxer thing going instead of
And then
like
the other guy
running.
going like this, the security guy doing
Yeah.
this. And I'm just like, what are you doing? What
Like,
are you doing?
run the other way, hit the intercom and signal red alert or something. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know. Anyway, it was they were like, "Oh, cool action scene." In
Oh, cringe.
1967. Now we're like, not so much.
Actually, I don't know that people thought it was cool in 1967 either.
Entirely possible. Um,
Yeah.
Another thing that I wanted to bring up, since we were talking about the constellation, I almost said consolation. That's funny. And actually, Chris Littlefield brings up what I want to talk about. So the different insignia for the constellation and the kind of reverb effects that has had through canon and discussions online in the 2000s and that sort of thing. I think it's interesting that years later there's that memo by Bob Justman that like points this out as a mistake, that he was like, our mighty starships should all have the same insignia, not this changed one. And then they of course repeat this for the Exeter later. It's yet another different symbol and stuff. So it's definitely interesting that at this point the assumption for years in fandom was that every starship has a different insignia because of this one choice made in this episode, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it was, and I had forgotten about that. And so when Decker finally comes on the screen, I'm like, oh yeah, he has that weird insignia we've never seen before or again.
Yeah.
So it always just looked, I was staring at it way too much when I was watching it this time. I was like, kind of looks like a warped backwards B. What is going on there? What is that supposed to represent? Is this a Greek character like a delta symbol, or,
Mm-hmm.
I went off on a tangent in my own brain while watching the episode.
Totally. Yeah, me too. Whenever I see this, because I'm always wondering these things as well. Now, this is not a canon explanation, but it's a really cool retcon that I really like that was done by Christopher L. Bennett, who wrote the Rise of the Federation novels for Star Trek Enterprise, which took place after the end of the series and right at the beginning of the Federation. And he actually designed a set of uniforms for that time period and explained the various symbols. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. And what he does is he links it to the founding members of the Federation and there being different sections of the Federation fleet under their purview.
Oh,
Yeah. And it
I like
kind of,
that.
it's pretty cool because the Arrowhead one works as Earth because we see it on the Enterprise uniforms, Star Trek Enterprise uniforms, in the form of the enlisted crew members rank. There's a little tiny delta. And on the Friendship 1 probe in Voyager, we see it, which is way before the original series as well. And actually, he did a picture, and I'm going to bring it up here just because. And Chrome tab, that one. Okay.
Oh, that's so cool.
That's really neat. I'll zoom in on the patches here. So the arrowhead is for Earth. It's United Earth Space Probe Agency. And then the Andorian Guard is kind of where the Constellation one comes from, the defense part of Starfleet, which makes sense given that Decker is kind of a more martial seeming captain than Kirk and his crew kind of thing. And then from there, we get this was on the Antares in Charlie X. And it was from Tellarite because it kind of looks like a hoof, he said.
Okay, that's not what I see, but all right.
Fair enough. There, you can see a number of things there.
Hoof was not the first thing that came.
And then Alpha Centauri, one of the other founding members, was like the one that Exeter had. And then the Vulcan Space Council, R&D and administration, they have the IDIC symbol. So totally not canon, totally not, yeah. But I like it.
Still, yeah, I like that too. It was great.
It makes it all fit in because, Enterprise did the thing on the Defiant with the sideways Starfleet symbol. But if you watch the Tholian web, especially now that we have it in high definition, there's shots of like Defiant crew members in the corridors and on beds and stuff, and they've got the Enterprise arrowhead symbol, which makes sense. Like they didn't design a special thing for that episode. They just put people in Starfleet costumes and, so
Yeah.
it's not canon now because Enterprise went and did In a Mirror Darkly and gave them a different logo, but yeah, that kind of messes it up. But anyway, but I like it. I think that's pretty cool.
It is really cool. I had no idea, so thank you for sharing that.
Oh, you're very welcome. I've just always loved that, and I try and like push that as much as I can, even though, again, non-canon. It's just what I use.
Headcanon.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Ooh, was that a hidden ad for your podcast?
I do have a podcast called Headcanon.
Really? Why don't you tell us about it?
Oh my gosh. Well, I do it by myself, and I talk about a lot of different things, but because I have many fandoms aside from Trek, I do talk about Trek a lot as well, but basically it's a rambling journey through how I rationalize things in my mind that don't necessarily make sense on screen.
I love it.
And just sometimes I'll just tell you about my weird dreams. You just never know what you're going to get. Lots of tangents. You will get lots of tangents because I can go off on a tangent very easily by myself.
Nice. Tangents are good. It's what good podcasts are made of, I think, personally.
Well, I agree, but some people don't like it, and those people can just not listen. But you can find it at darkcornerpodcast.com under the heading of Headcanon. So the heading of Headcanon.
Very nice. So other things in this episode, as you can see from the name I chose, Uhura is not in this episode. Instead, we have Lieutenant Palmer at communications.
Well, at least it's still a woman, but come on. Where's Uhura?
There was a reason she was not in this episode, and I can't remember. I remember reading ages ago some reason why she wasn't there, but I cannot for the life of me remember. And I did not look it up. So I did include Nichelle Nichols, though, because she was left out of the episode. So I brought her in here.
Yeah. I know that she was still working as a singer at the time, so it's possible it might have been a schedule conflict. I really don't know. There was one story that I heard one time where they were upset with her for having a scheduled conflict, and so they purposely kept another episode because of it. I don't know how truthful that is, but I'm just guessing it was probably a schedule conflict because she was still getting booked as a singer at the time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But Chekhov, I can't explain why Chekhov's not there.
Yeah, and this is something we were talking about before we went live too, was like I always remember that Uhura is not in this episode. Like it sticks out to me, but I always forget that Chekhov wasn't in it as well, which is odd because this is season 2. He should be there, so
he should.
Interesting. Wherefore art thou, Walter? And I know
maybe they were
I know
together.
That doesn't mean where. But...
Maybe Chekhov and Uhura were off doing something.
That could be. Ooh, super secret Section 31 mission.
Yes, I like it. That's headcanon now. Fantastic. Perfect. Got it.
Awesome. I love it. Okay. So going through this episode, we talked a bit about Spock. I wanted to talk, he has a small, not a huge role in this episode, but I like Sulu in this episode. There's some interesting choices by him that I may be totally misreading, that kind of thing. But when Decker initially orders them to go after the planet killer, he seems like he's kind of like, yeah, this is the right thing to do. And I may have totally been misreading that, but he seemed to be like, aye, sir, like excited about that. But then very quickly comes to the realization, oh no, this is a bad idea. And I need to listen to Spock. And then he's even more excited when Spock retakes command. I don't know.
think it the way I interpreted it was he was like, "Oh, this is a Commodore." You know,
Mm,
snap to. I'm
yeah.
being given an order by a Commodore. And he wasn't, I don't think he was even really thinking about the chain of command sort of thing at that point.
Mhm.
And so it was kind of reflex. I'm getting an order from a superior officer. I, sir, oh, wait a minute. This guy's not in command. So it just, I think
Yeah.
it felt like that to me. But, you know, it's difficult to say because it could very easily have been your interpretation as well. I can see exactly why you would think that.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know. I don't like that interpretation that of mine particularly because I'm like, Sulu's smarter than that. But
Yeah.
he quickly comes around if that is the case.
Mhm.
But I do like that moment where Spock takes back command because like all of the characters are even kind of acknowledging that it's illegal what they're
Mhm.
doing. Like Spock does try to relieve Decker under regulations, but Decker kind of outmaneuvers him, and Spock helps him outmaneuver him by saying that, like, Doctor, you would need to provide the test results that show he's unfit for command. And McCoy says, "Oh, I didn't have time." And Decker's like, "Ah, ha, ha." But when Kirk orders Spock to take back command of the Enterprise, Kirk does not actually have the authority to do that. And Decker points that out. He says, "You have no authority to remove me from command and like under regulations." And Kirk says, "Damn the regulate." Well, he doesn't say damn the regulations, but to hell with the regulations or whatever he says. Spock, take back command. And Spock, you can tell, contemplates it for a moment, then turns to Decker and says, "I relieve you of command." And Decker says, "I don't recognize your authority to remove me." And all Spock can say in response is, "You can file a protest with Starfleet Command." He knows that what he's doing is technically against regulations, but he also knows that a judgment later will say that it was the right thing to do, which I think is really interesting.
Well, prior to that, Decker was, trying to force them to, basically do something that would end up getting them all killed. And
Mhm.
Spock's logicking that as you are attempting to commit suicide, which is grounds for me removing you from command. And he's got all these witnesses on the bridge.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think in his mind, he's just like, this is a continuation of that logic. He is going to get us killed and himself killed. Therefore, he is a danger to us and to himself. And I'm going to relieve him of command under that. I don't think it really had as much to do with Kirk's order because really, Spock knows regulations better than Kirk. I can tell you that. So,
That's true.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that he logicked his way out of that.
Mm-hmm. I do love, like, even what you say about regulations, that he knows them better than Kirk. I do love that Kirk says, "I don't care about the regulations. I don't care that you have a higher rank than me. I am ordering my first officer on the scene to relinquish command." And yeah, I love that whole scene. I think that's really great.
Agree.
Going on to some of the minutia of the episode, I guess. I think this is the first time we see Kirk's swanky green wraparound thing
The
too,
wraparound, yeah.
or at least this version of it, because there was a season 1 version as well, but this
Yeah.
particular
I think
version,
this one is a brighter green. Am I wrong about that?
I think so. It's a brighter green, and it's got the kind of gold trim here.
Mm-hmm.
um, the reason I think it's the first time, I haven't looked at the previous episodes. If I looked at their titles, I'd be able to remember, but the reason I think it's the first time too is there's later like a strip of black added, but here
Mm-hmm.
it's just the gold with the green tunic. So
Yeah.
slight variation for all the cosplayers out there, I guess.
Yeah, subtle.
Mm-hmm.
Give a bit of a V-neck, show a little chest.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was the thought behind it.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, let's think about William Shatner and think he was totally behind that. He was totally just like, I need to show some chest.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be sexy. Let's give
Yeah.
the ladies what they want. I'm sure he really thinks a lot of himself. Anyway.
So we've got Bones in this episode as well. Got Dr. McCoy. Not a huge role for him, though, interestingly. He's not in this for very long.
Well, he's not. And I find it really weird because when they transport aboard the Constellation, Kirk doesn't have a phaser and McCoy does not have a tricorder. And then all of a sudden later, they are there. So just like continuity. Oh, kind of messed up on that one. Just a little bit.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because I always thought it was weird because I'm just like, wait a minute. Shouldn't he be having a tricorder or something like that? And all of a sudden he pulls out a hypospray and I was like, what? It's continuity error, you know.
He kept it in his pockets. Wait.
No. They didn't have pockets.
Exactly.
See, that's why the Enterprise uniforms were the best thing ever. They had functional and useful features like pockets.
And so did these, which they should, but anyway.
Absolutely. and the Enterprise uniforms in season 2 of Discovery also have pockets in the pants.
That's right. Yeah.
You can actually, if you were close enough to Miss Spock, you could actually see there's a zipper right here on the hip that is a pocket. There's one on the other side too, but you can't see it with the way he's turned.
Right.
There's pockets there.
Yeah. So one other tiny little thing from this episode that I noticed watching, that I think it's one of like 2, maybe 3 episodes where they actually walk in front of the view screen, because the original episode anyway did like just a rear projection for those particular scenes, which for the remastered edition, I have to imagine made their job really difficult, because they would have had to rotoscope out the people walking across frame by frame, because in the remastered edition, the first time there's asteroids going by the screen, and the second time there's the dead planet killer on the screen. And I think in the original episode, it was just a plain star field, which they would have like projected or something. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. I hadn't really thought about that, but now that you've said that, I will never be able to unsee it. So, which is not a problem.
Yeah. The direction of this episode is really interesting. There were a lot of really different choices made for it, and made it feel a lot different from a typical Star Trek episode at this time, especially like the bridge shots. And I think probably because so much of the episode takes place on the bridge, the fact that they're using new and different camera angles really made it feel fresh. Yeah,
and there wasn't so much of this crazy reflection showing just Kirk's eyes, the reflecting of light over just, at a Dutch angle, just right across his eyes. There was some of that, but not as much. And I appreciated that, because that just is so distracting to me every time it happens. They're just like, oh,
yeah,
here we go again. I know it was the 60s, but please stop that. So, but no, there was a lot more variety in the way that they framed everybody in this episode visually. So, and got a bunch of extras with lines.
Yeah, that's true.
Like a bunch of them.
Yeah, and we got Mr. Kyle too, which is always fun. I love seeing Kyle in these. Did he have any lines? I can't remember.
I don't know.
I just finished watching it like half an hour before we started this, but I'm not sure now.
I don't think he did. Well, let's see. I don't remember now. But it was funny, because when we were watching the episode, because Dave is so sweet and watches all of these episodes with me, whatever we're covering here, and he's like, why are there security people on the bridge? And then when they have to take Decker away, he's like, oh, that's why there's security people on the bridge.
Yep.
Just in case of crazy Commodores.
What shift you got right now? I'm on crazy Commodore duty. Yeah.
Better that than Dr. McCoy duty, let me tell you. I'm sorry. I'm kidding.
TJ makes a great point here. One thing I love about this episode is it's an action-packed story that doesn't require a villain. Yes. I agree. Absolutely. We have a bit of an antagonist in the form of Decker at times, but no like villain, which I really like. The fact that it's this kind of mindless robot machine that has this immense power and stuff, I think is a really cool storyline for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. The one line that always kind of bugged me a little bit, and it's at the very end of the episode where they're talking about using the constellation like they would have used a nuclear bomb back in the day. And Kirk says this is the first time that such a thing was used for a constructive purpose. I'm like, let's look up the definition of the word constructive. Like, you eliminated a weapon that's going to save lives, but you still used it to destroy a weapon. The very constructive just was not the right word, I don't think.
No, it isn't the right word. A good is, saying good instead of constructive might have been better,
or
because
or something.
Yeah, destroying a weapon is always a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Especially one that's going to devour your entire galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, in that regard, yeah, it's definitely something destructive being used for a good reason, other than, killing millions of people, which is what it was designed to do.
Right.
So,
absolutely.
And, I liked Kirk likening it to a doomsday weapon, that it was that thing like the hydrogen bomb that, here we have this terrible thing, and if you don't be good, we're going to use it. And then everybody else going, oh, well, we have to get one of those too, until everybody has them. And now nobody can use them because it will literally mean the end of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do wonder how that thing got sent out. I don't have to know the story. It's kind of fun just wondering, but I am curious about what happened there.
Great minds.
Yeah, because there are some non-canon things.
There are
some I didn't. I know Voyager encountered one. Didn't TNG, the TNG crew in a book, encounter one?
Yeah, I did want to bring up those a little bit, which is a very famous Star Trek: The Next Generation novel by Peter David, actually, called Vendetta, which is mostly a Borg story that ties in the planet killer as well.
Right. Like it was, I remember now, they thought that, not thought, but a race of people built it to battle the Borg. They knew they weren't going to finish the strong weapon in time, and so they basically sent out the weaker one. I almost knocked over my drink. And then they were assimilated by the Borg, and that other rogue thing just went out eaten.
Yeah, and then there's a follow-up to that story called Before Dishonor, which is not my favorite novel, but I will leave it at that. Consult the appropriate episodes of Literary Treks if you want further thoughts on those books. But Vendetta, I love that novel, and one of the non-canon uses of the Doomsday Machine and the people who built it, supposedly. It's also oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I know I've read it, but it's been probably close to 30 years since I did. Yeah. Oh, okay, tell us how you really feel. I'm sensing some anger.
All I'm going to say is agreed. Anyway.
I haven't read it for that reason, because I did not hear good things about it. So
it's unfortunate. It's just, yeah, I won't go into it here, but so the Doomsday Machine has also been used in Star Trek Online. I'm not an expert in that. I remember fighting it way back in the day when I played Star Trek Online, but it's been years. So I can't really remember what the storyline of that was. If someone in the comments knows,
someone will probably tell us. I'll be honest, I've tried to play Star Trek Online, but I am terrible at 3-dimensional thinking, like really terrible at it. I am like Khan. I just think in 2 dimensions, and it's really difficult for me to maneuver a freaking spaceship and fire the phasers at the same time. So I haven't gotten very far, but now that I know that there's a planet killer, I'm just going to be, once I go back to it, because I know I'm going to go back to it at some point, I'm just going to be on edge all the time thinking, when's the planet killer going to show up?
I remember in it you were outfitted with these special torpedoes, and I think they were developed by the Klingons or something. So you had to time it so you like face the front of it and fire them into the maw and get out of the way before it fires its anti-proton beam. So
right,
yeah, it's all kind of crazy stuff like that. Yeah. I'm kind of out of my notes. I'm kind of finished everything that I wanted to talk about. Again, I said I had some other notes that I accidentally left upstairs, but I think I got all of those too. Mm-hmm. Was there anything that we've missed that we should talk about in the comments, or Brandi, that you think of?
Oh, I can only think of random things like, what the heck was that giant Trident scanner that Scotty pulled out?
Oh, I love that thing.
Apparently, according to what I have read on Memory Alpha, it was designed by Spock. And I said to Dave at the time, in TNG, that's going to fit in the palm of your hand. It's not going to be that big anymore.
I love that. Yeah. I think it's called they call it the Trident scanner.
Trident scanner. Yep. Yeah. That's exactly what they call it. And it was so big, but at the same time, I'm like, that is just so unique. We haven't really seen anything like that before. And yeah.
I feel like the ensign in Trials and Tribulations had one. I could be wrong.
I'm going to have to watch that again.
I could be wrong about that.
I love that episode so much.
It's so good.
So much.
And this does show up in other episodes as well. But it's such a unique prop. Like, I love it. I think that's just the coolest. Like, it's so designed. Like, it's not obviously something like, there's some episodes where Spock's got a little calculator and it's obviously like a modern engineering calculator or something like that. Modern at the time, I should say.
I've seen actually close-ups of that. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. But that one is just so designed. Like, it's not anything.
And it's like white and silver and stuff. And that's not usually, like, all of their equipment is black. And then you've got this big white Trident scanner, and it's just like, here I am, the Trident scanner. It's just it's beautiful.
I'd be like Dax. I'd just be like, I love classic 23rd century design. It's just so crazy. It's like a grill on the front, like a Cadillac, like this. I love it.
It's fantastic. It is so eye-catching. Just fantastic. Just huge. I mean, that thing was like a foot long.
Yeah. I'd love to. I've always wanted to like hold it in my hands just to see, like, it's really cool. So yeah, anybody in the comments have anything that they want us to discuss about the episode besides the fact that the Doomsday Machine looks like a giant joint?
Well, see, in the original visuals, it basically looked like a cornucopia wrapped in tinfoil. Apparently what they did was actually take a windsock and dip it in concrete.
Oh, interesting.
So, and then wrapped it in tinfoil. And then they filmed the sparkler and put that in the center of it. But there was just something about it, about the original version of it, that was just scarier. Am I the only person who thinks this?
I mean, there's something iconic about it that freaked me out as a kid, for sure.
Yeah, maybe it's just the fact that I was a kid, because I mean, this newer version, of course, still looks very imposing and scary. And as you get closer to it, you start to see like the insides of it, and you're like, what is that stuff around its maw? What is that? Just things that you can't really see in an original series version, the original things. But it seemed a bit more icy. I guess the outside looked a bit more icy and tinfoily. And it's not the last thing that Star Trek will make look like it was wrapped in tinfoil. Voyage home, I'm talking to you.
Oh man, somebody's the Bugles. There we go.
Yep.
It totally. I may have that may have just triggered a memory of me as a kid, like doing some of the music, holding one of those. I'm pretty sure I did that. Like that all just came flooding back just now.
Bugles were not around when I was a kid, so that's how
Oh.
old I am. But if we'd had them, then I would have done that.
I'm pretty sure I did that. Yeah.
Good times. Good times.
Well, anything else that we can think of, or shall we move on to our final ratings, I guess?
Well, one thing to bring up, Commodore Decker, because we have Captain Decker in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and when I was a kid, I was like, "Are they related?" Because was he his dad? Because that guy's dead, I thought. So it's like, as a kid, I'm just like, is it a coincidence that these guys are both named Decker, or is there a connection there?
There was supposed to be a connection, I think,
Yeah,
and for the most part,
not a non-canon one. At this
yeah, for the
point.
most part, it's implied, but I think it was supposed to be kind of overt. Gene Roddenberry, I think, does bring it up in the motion picture novelization.
Yes, unfortunately, I have read that.
Which isn't canon, but
no,
it's as close to canon as a book can come, since it was written by Gene Roddenberry. So in my mind, it's always been Will Decker was Matt Decker's son. I could have just changed it to father instead of letting on that I mixed that up. But
well, time-wise, it would work, So I'm just saying it would work as canon.
Yeah.
But yeah, we won't go over what I think of the novelization.
We have a familiar face with Bruce Gibson. Bruce Gibson. Yeah, I think so.
Oh, he looks like a young, handsome guy.
What are you saying?
I'm just saying, I know a Bruce Gibson. Sorry, I'm so bad. Yeah.
Bruce, hey, how's it going?
Yeah, hey Bruce, welcome. We love you. We miss you.
Yeah. I could be wrong, but I think Bruce does have a link for this, so he could jump in if he wanted to.
If he so desired.
Yeah, if he decided it was, something he wanted to do. Yeah, so I guess ratings from the watchers. What are your thoughts and ratings for the Doomsday Machine? Is this a top-notch classic episode of the original series, or is it not? Liam's here as well.
Liam's back from shopping. His partner made him go shopping, and he wasn't going to be here.
Wow.
And now he's here at the very end.
Liam, welcome. Good to see you. He purchased corn, so
that's good. Last time I saw you, you were in a clothing store, but okay. Where did corn come from?
Nice.
Anyway, I don't live in Australia. I don't know.
So David says 4 out of 5 regulations. It's good. I wonder which one is missing from this episode.
Ooh, I'll have to ask him.
We've got 5 out of 5 non-bluffing Vulcans. 4 planet killers out of 5. 4 out of 5 Star Trek bugles. I like it. 10 out of 10 constellations. 5 out of 5 bugles. 5 out of 5 insert Trek reference here. So yeah.
That's fair. Well done.
That's also my rating right there. I'm just gonna go with that. Yeah, this is such a classic episode, top notch. Ridiculous fight scenes aside, I love just about every moment of this episode. So, and the ridiculous fight scene, I even love that just because it's so ridiculous. So,
Yep. Yeah, it's like I said, it's a dad lap episode for me. So I was scarred as a child by it. As an adult, I can appreciate it much more. Of course. I mean, even when I was a child, even when I knew I was scared of that episode, it's not like I just stopped watching Trek. I didn't. I still watched the scary episodes from Dad's lap. So it gets 5 out of 5 Trident scanners for me.
Nice. I like that one. 8.5 out of 10 out of control Commodores. Now I'm just thinking of like the band though.
Oh my
Which
goodness.
is great. Oh.
Hey, they brought us Lionel Richie, yo. So
Liam. My goodness.
he doesn't care for TOS a great
Fair
deal.
enough.
And
Fair
that's
enough.
fine.
I appreciate you joining us anyway, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
11 out of 12 Constitution glass vessels, which presumably after this episode is all that's left. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Definitely so.
Ooh, 3 out of 5. I think that might be the lowest score we have.
Volleyball
punches. Yep.
It is, but seriously, this is volleyball. It really is. It's volleyball hands. Anyway.
Although he has another rating here, 4 out of 5 ears of corn.
So volleyball punches, 3 volleyball punches are worth the same as 4 ears of corn.
Mm-hmm.
Got the exchange rate down. Okay, got it.
Oh, we got more Commodore puns coming. So 5 out of 5 classic Australian cars. The Holden Commodore.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick. Excellent.
Well, what do you say we decide what episodes we're going to do next week, I guess?
Excellent.
Yeah. So yeah, we're probably going to have to do one of us. I don't know. We'll figure it out. All right. I'm going to do the same thing that I did last week. I'm going to grab a random ship off of my Eagle Moss wall here.
Ooh.
And the first person to guess correctly, make sure it's out of the shot, which ship it is, can choose an episode or film to do next week. I'm going to give a couple little hints. It is from the Kelvin timeline. It's a Kelvin timeline ship, or one that we have seen in one of the Kelvin timeline films, or more, maybe. I don't know. So there you go. First person to guess what Eagle Moss ship I have in my hand here, which is from the Kelvin timeline or seen in the Kelvin timeline, you get to pick an episode or film.
I can only think of one. And so I'm probably wrong. Not that I get to guess, but I always guess just in my brain to see if I get it right. So
Chris Hill with the Franklin.
That's the one I was gonna guess, because it's the only one I can think of.
And it was the first Kelvin timeline ship guessed by people. That was, man, I don't know, that was too obvious or something. But nice job, Chris Hill.
It's just, I think it's the most memorable. Because can you remember the name of Admiral What's-His-Name ship in Into Darkness? I can't.
The Vengeance, but yeah. It's too far. It's way over there.
Fair.
So yeah, Chris Hill, you get to choose the first episode or film. So I'm just I've jumped behind in the comments because everybody guessed now. Mm-hmm. So I just gotta make sure I don't miss your choice. And in the meantime, same brainwaves, absolutely. We're on that. We got that connection there. Whoops. But in the meantime, Brandi, if you want to...
Yes. Okay, so I am holding in my hand a Fansets pin that is a Star Trek character. It is not Spock. I am wearing Spock today. So the first person to correctly guess which pin is in my hand will get the next choice. So it's a Star Trek character. I will narrow it down and say that it is a female Star Trek character.
Interesting. Okay. I've got a guess, but I don't count. Ooh, okay. So Chris has said bada bing, bada bang, by the way. So
okay.
We're putting that one back up again.
Yes, because it has not won before, so
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I've got a lot of them here. So far, none of them are correct. Keep them coming. At least I'm glad I narrowed it down to female, because otherwise we'd be here all night. So, okay, then for one thing, the number 1 pin isn't out yet on Fansets. And as far as I know, there isn't a Kalar in the Fansets pins either. So both of those are irrelevant. Sorry, guys.
No one's guessed what my guess was yet either.
Still not seeing it. Still not seeing it. Keep him coming. Because my hand is starting to have all the blood drain out of it, and I want to make sure that you guys know that I'm not cheating here. So
Whoa,
keep it going.
Stuff. There we go.
Keep it going. They've run out of female characters that they can think of. Oof.
Well, no one's guessed the one that I think it might be. That's funny.
Well, as soon as I see the right answer, I will ask you, I will ask you, Dan, which one you think it is.
Okay.
And then we'll see. Okay, I have found the right answer. Who do you think it is?
Okay,
Dan?
so it's not. I thought it was Giorgio, but
nope, it is Laurel.
Oh, very
Liam
nice.
Smart got it.
Where are we? Liam Smart. Yes. Okay. So Liam Smart, you get the next choice.
Because I'm collecting all the ladies in Star Trek. Yeah.
So do we want to do, just to change it up, 2 random picks?
Sure.
To put up
we
against
do that.
Okay.
I think that's fair.
Right. So I'll keep an eye on the comments for Liam Smart's guess, or not guess, his choice. To Paul's Mom is not an episode, so I'm assuming that is not your choice.
No.
Okay. Nor is moi ha ha ha. But
come on, Liam. Give us an episode that you want us to cover. But yeah, if everyone wants to see the close-up of Laurel, there she is.
That's pretty cool.
I really enjoyed the Fansets pins.
All
and then
right.
they sent me a dang 15% off coupon with my last order. I'm like, Fansets! Ooh, Genesis, TNG.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Thank you, Liam.
Okay, so random number 1.
Have we covered a TNG episode yet?
Yeah, we did the Chain of Command.
Yes, sorry. I'm brain dead.
Is that the only one?
I think that's the only one we've done. It was Chain of Command. And that was 2 episodes, so it was like,
yeah,
double feature.
I'm loving some of the reaction. Can I go on record here and say I kind of enjoy Genesis?
Can I go on record and say I don't know what that is by the title, but if you tell me the description, I'll know what it is.
It's the one where the entire crew de-evolves.
Oh, right. Spiders and weird stuff. Yeah.
Gotcha. Barkley turns into a spider. Because that makes sense, but whatever. Yeah. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's so bad, but I love it.
Okay, so are we ready to go random?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so between 1 and 9, correct? I ask this every week.
Yes. Enterprise.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What am I missing? Oh, movies. 9. Okay. I'm doing up myself a cheat sheet because Bruce usually keeps it in his head, and he's better at that. But anyway.
Okay. Hey Siri, give me a random number between 1 and 9.
A random number between 1 and 9 is 4.
4.
Okay, so that would be DS9.
All right. And 7 seasons. Hey Siri, give me a random number between 1 and 7.
A random number between 1 and 7 is 1.
Okay. All right.
How many episodes are there in there? 20 what?
So there are. It's a short season.
Right.
So it's 20, except it counts emissaries 1 and 2, so 19, I guess.
Okay. Hey Siri, give me a random number between 1 and 19.
A random number between 1 and 19 is 3.
Ooh, okay. So that would be A Man Alone, where Odo is accused of murdering a Bajoran.
Oh yes. Well, that was season 1? I
Yep.
thought it was further along.
It was the second regular episode after Emissary.
Here's this really cool guy. Now we're gonna make him look like a murderer.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
All right.
So
let's do random number 2, and I'll do it on my phone just to change it up.
Go for it. Absolutely.
Right. Give me a random number between 1 and 9. Oh, it does it differently.
Here's a random number, 1.
Ooh.
That's kind of cool.
TOS.
So TOS, 3 seasons. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a number between 1 and 3. Oof. TOS season 3. Okay, let's open up that page. Oh man. This could be bad.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Okay, season 3 has 24 episodes. Give me a number between 1 and 24. Oops, it didn't do it right there. Give me a number between 1 and 24.
Here's a random number, 4.
Okay, number 4. No, we already had that one. We're not gonna. It's
okay.
And the Children Shall Lead. So, no.
Nope.
Give me a number between 1 and 24. I'm pulling my veto power.
8.
Okay.
Here's a random number, 8.
All right, 8. Let's see here. For the world is hollow and I have touched the sky. All right. That works. Except it will not fit in a Twitter poll option, but I'll figure out a way.
Yep. I'm sure. I have faith in you.
All right. Interesting. Interesting choices this time around. More reaction.
I think you said that earlier.
Yep. Yeah, we're eliciting some reaction for sure. Yeah. Well, on that fun and happy note. So yeah, our choices are Deep Space Nine, Bada Bing Bada Bang, from TNG Genesis, from DS9 Season 1, A Man Alone, and from the original series, For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky. Still officially the longest title in Star Trek, although The Butcher's Knife Cares Not for the Lamb's Cry comes very close, but it still doesn't quite beat it. Because these are the things that I keep track of in my head.
Yeah, I was just thinking I'm counting the words in my head, and yes, the lamb cries not for the butcher's knife cares not for the lamb. Oh my god! Stop talking. Just stop talking. Carry on.
All right. Well, you can look for the tweet with those poll options on @Kertrats. That's KERTRATS on Twitter. That's my Twitter account. We also have @PositivelyTrek, which is the Twitter account for my and Bruce's new podcast, relatively new. We're 17 episodes in. It's been a lot of fun. We're really enjoying it. We've got some really cool plans for stuff coming up that I really can't wait to reveal to you guys. I think it's going to be fun. We're just finalizing some other stuff. There's going to be some big changes and movements in the next few weeks that I will save announcing here until I have Bruce here as well, and we can kind of announce it together. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. Bruce, I know you're hanging around in the comments. I'm not going to say anything. Don't worry. We'll tell everybody when it's time. Yeah, and you can find me, of course, here on this channel. I'm trying to get going on videos again. It's been tough lately. I just put out a video that was way longer than I thought it would be, which is my review of the Short Treks Blu-ray set. Video ended up being just a little under a half hour long. So yeah, it's a pretty sizable for my videos usually. So, but I think it's interesting if you haven't gotten that set and you haven't seen the Short Treks. If you live outside of North America, this might be your first legal way of seeing them. So yeah, hopefully pick that set up. I think it's worth it. So anyway, that's my.
I got my set.
You did. That's awesome.
I did.
I got mine here somewhere, but yeah.
I've committed to eventually getting all new Trek on Blu-ray because yeah, I know I can watch it anytime I want, but I like special features.
Yeah, special features are great, and it's not. I know it's we're gonna have streaming forever, but I still like to have the actual copy. I don't know.
Agree. There's just something more special about it.
Mm-hmm. I just read Bruce's comment as to what Chris Littlefield asked, "What's the secret?" You weren't supposed to tell them, Bruce, but okay.
Well, unless it's a video podcast, no one's ever gonna know.
Well, now they are.
Well, you should have thought about that before you decided to do your podcast naked.
Yeah. Oh, darn it.
Sorry.
Family show.
Yeah, if I can clean up my language for this, then you guys cannot. You guys can put some clothes on. So
fair enough.
Yes.
So, Brandi, where can people find you?
Places and things.
Whoa.
Sorry. That was startling, and I didn't mean for it to be. You can find me on Twitter at Brandywine12. I spell Brandi with an I, just in case anyone's wondering. So, you can find me on the Edge on Trek FM. And you can find me obviously on Headcanon, which I mentioned earlier, and the Dark Corner podcast I do with my husband Dave, and we talk about whatever we feel like. And it's often very, very nerdy because we are big nerds, and we have a lot of fun with that. And so you can find both Headcanon and the Dark Corner podcast at darkcornerpodcast.com.
Love it. All right. Well, no, Bruce, no. Dad, we need you back here.
Come here. Here.
But thank you for joining us, even though it was just in the chat. Glad you could make it for the last little bit. And thank you everyone else for joining us. This is always so much fun. It's just like a little highlight of my week to be able to do this. So thank you all so much for indulging us in our nerditry.
Our nerditry. I love it.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah. And we'll see you next week with one of these wonderful episodes.
Indeed.
Interesting. I can't wait to see what wins. Have a good night.
Yeah. Live, long, and